welcome to FDN News. I'm Kelsey Cruz. Our top story tonight, the new Indiana abortion law adds more restrictions to abortions, and it's receiving nationwide controversy. Thousands of people have been calling Governor Pence's office, sending him emails, letters, and packages in the mail objecting against his decision. This week, I met with some HU students and faculty members to find out what they think about this new law.
I have a picture, and this is a picture of my friend Greta. And Greta is 43, and she was born with Down syndrome.
The topic of abortion due to the child having a disability is an emotional subject for Dr. McDonald. House Bill 1337 was recently signed by Indiana Governor Mike Pence. This bill prohibits a woman from getting an abortion if her reasoning is solely due to race, color, national origin, ancestry, sex, or diagnosis or potential diagnosis of Down syndrome or any other disability of the fetus. After the bill was signed, Governor Pence experienced a lot of backlash.
There are clearly two sides to this argument. Even at Huntington University, you'll find students who fall on both sides of the issue.
I am pro-life because a baby at 21 days is a heartbeat. So that's how you classify someone as alive or dead, is their heartbeat. So a life is a life to me, no matter what kind of chromosome background they have.
Another student said, "I believe it's a woman's right to do as she wants with her body. If that means taking action to abort a baby, so be. I'm not advocating that abortion is a good thing. I'm only saying that a woman should have the right over her own body." While Dr. McDonald is not in favor of abortion, she's concerned that a new issue will present itself considering that abortion is still legal.
I think what people are going to do is they're going to lie. So I think we're going to be pushing people into a situation where they're not going to be honest with their physicians, that they're going to lie, they're going to come up with another reason.
McDonald believes that there should be more support for families who do have children with disabilities.
I think our focus needs to be assuring that if they do choose life, if they do choose to carry that baby to term, that all of the supports are going to be in place to help them during that child's lifetime.
Reporting for FDN News, I'm Kelsey Cruz.
The United States has committed to accept 10,000 refugees from Syria. Last Thursday, HU's pre-law student organization, Eunomia, hosted a debate on the Syrian refugee crisis. Students were asked if the U.S. should agree to the UN High Commissioner's request to accept an additional 12,000 refugees. I am joined in the studio with sophomore pre-law major Darius Hillman. Darius, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Why don't you start off by telling me why this Syrian refugee crisis is so important?
So essentially, about 5 years ago in 2011, pro-democracy uprisings start sprouting throughout Syria against the Assad regime. Since then, it's escalated into full-scale civil war, which we're still experiencing now. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been killed, tortured, worse. And 4.5 million of these civilians have left the country seeking asylum in places like the United States. So it's quite a global burden.
Absolutely. Now, for those who are opposed to Syrian refugees coming into the United States, what are some of the arguments they would have for their stance?
Yeah, there are a lot of arguments there, but most of them in opposition, most of the pushback comes from a national security isolationist kind of perspective. And they would argue that accepting thousands of refugees from a conflict zone that's highly anti-American, highly radicalized, is a pretty dangerous risk to take with American lives on the line. It's nearly impossible to quantify how many potential radicalized terrorists you'd be accepting with 22,000 immigrants coming in. But 99.9% of these refugees being peace-seeking still means that 0.1% have the potential to be radicalized. That's 22 individuals in this case that have been accepted that could be terrorists. The Paris attacks were perpetrated by 8 and 130 people died. So their fears are valid.
Now, on the other side of things, for those who would be in favor of more Syrian refugees coming into the United States, what would their arguments for their stance be?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of these people would argue that as a civilized Western nation, we have some kind of moral obligation as a leader in the world to accept innocent civilians, men, women, and children that are going through some serious persecution and suffering. and that we need to shoulder our burden as one of those Western nations and take some of those refugees. And that 22,000 being such a small number in relation to the rest of our population, that the risk that we're taking on really, after a screening process that takes 18 to 24 months at the border, is not nearly as risky as the opponents would have it sound.
Now, there's clearly two sides to this issue, but how could we as everyday citizens, how can we help these Syrian refugees?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. I'd say that first and foremost, we need to be aware of what's going on. Get out there, watch the news, don't just take one source, don't just take my word for it. Know what's going on so that you can actively participate in these discussions. Likewise, as Christians, we need to be praying for these people. They are experiencing such inhumane acts of violence that we can't even imagine here in the United States. And there are a lot of great organizations out there like World Vision, Amnesty International is a huge one, that we could put our time, our effort, and our money into to try to help the Syrian refugees that are already in camps in Lebanon and Turkey and Jordan. So know what's going on in the world so that you can vote for the kind of statesmen and representatives that agree with you on this issue.
Absolutely. Darius, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
FDN CMLN met with students after HU's debate on Thursday to find out what you think about the Syrian refugee crisis.
Refugees becoming such a hot topic, especially during this presidential debate, I wanted to talk with some Huntington University students to get their opinion on what should be done about the rising Syrian refugee crisis.
Well, I mean, obviously, it'd be important to help out and, be there to support. So, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea to, let them in and have housing, but I guess there's always like that thought in the mind of, wanting to kind of control population and things like that. So it's kind of a tough question to answer.
I think America should be careful how you're taking them, because in Europe, I have the example of my country, like we are taking a lot of them, and because we have to, basically, because there are no barriers to get them away. But I think in general, I think Americans should just get the 10,000 that they are getting now and wait to see what are the consequences, and not go for the 25,000 right now. That's what I think.
As Christians, our response should be to open our arms to any refugee, the Syrian refugees, as well as anybody that needs a place to stay or needs shelter and needs someone to care for them. So I would hope that would be our response as Christians and as America, as people who have resources to provide to people. I would really hope that would be our response.
Whether you're for it or against it, the rising refugee crisis is definite to get people talking. Here at the Hub at Huntington University, CMLN, FDN News.
FDN wants to know where you stand on the Syrian refugee crisis. Should the U.S. accept more refugees? Tweet us your thoughts at FDN_news. Well, that's all we have for you in this installment of FDN News. Be sure to check us out online at forresterdigital.net and follow us on Twitter at FDN_news. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.